I'm designing and building a dinghy cruising sailboat for 2 people, and this is the progress I've made so far. This is the first video in a build series on the boat, I'm calling it the Bed Bug. 2 other small sailboats that I designed and put together are documented on my channel, and those videos didn't get released until the boats were already on the water. So I'm a little bit nervous about publishing videos as I'm progressing through a project that's not finished. At this point, I've got my frames cut and mocked up on a Strongback. But, I mean, you know, there's always a chance things could go wrong, and I'm just showing the world something that I'm never going to finish. Anyways, let me talk about the design. So, my wife is the one I got to make happy with this boat especially. I think my wife likes sailing maybe even more than I do. So she tolerates me, or she has tolerated me turning the house into a shipyard. But now she says I'm building boats that are too small. And you know, she's right. I focused on building boats that I can, like a car topper, put in the back of my truck. The last boat that I made was this dory that I car top. Yeah, we've rowed it with 3 people on board and the dog, a little bit of gear, but really, I mean, it's a boat for like rowing or sailing and like sleeping on board for 1 person in mild weather. Before that, I made a boat that's 13 feet long. It's a yawl rigged skiff that my wife and I, we've taken it out packed with camping gear, me, my wife, and the dog. But she says it's cramped, and she's right. I like it because I load it in the back of my truck and just go somewhere and then dump it out the back of the truck into the water and sleep on board. This summer I took it up some estuaries on the Pacific coast and slept on board most nights, and there's an article about it on the Small Craft Advisor Substack that I'll link in the subscription on this video. That seamless skiff build is on my channel too, with the design included for free on there. I love that boat, but my wife's right. It is better for 1 person. So now I've got to make something that'll carry 2 people comfortably and have room for us to sleep on board. So it's going to have to go on a trailer, 15 foot, about 4 inches long, about 5.5 foot beam, yawl rigged, removable water tanks. The cockpit is like my last 2 boats, but scaled up a little bit, inspired by the spacious midships of Jim McCallick's boats, but I just moved it aft. So it's a midships thwart to row from, and then the crew operates the boat sitting on the sole, or in this case on the floor of the boat, just aft of that midships thwart. And in this one, you can put your feet down below the floor into like a 6 foot lower bilge that might be more comfortable for some people, even though I'm comfortable just sprawling my feet out at floor level. And there's 6 feet of flat from that midships thwart all the way to the transom that you can lay down on. It's about 4 feet wide there. So that'll be a comfortable spot to sleep on. Back of the transom, like bench seating at the transom with a little bit of storage or like positive flotation at the seat back. So when it so when the boat capsizes, it should have some positive flotation up high. Also, that stern seating will really stiffen up the transom. I got a big transom on this boat, and that'll really stiffen that up. Then under that seat at the stern, a little bit of stowage when you're underway, or take that gear out from under, and that's where your feet go when you lay down. So that's the back half of the boat. The front half of the boat is inspired by a boat that Matt Layden did called the Sand Flea. And I've never seen it in person, but from what I can tell, it's just this big flat deck with a hatch in the middle, and you sit in there and operate the boat. And it looks to me like you can get inside that hatch and lay down and sleep on board, close up that hatch if there's weather or if it's cold. And so the forward half of my boat does that, where I've got this flat deck that's at seat level, So you can sit on it, recline on it, lay back. And then maybe if you open up this 3 foot by 1 foot hatch cover and sit on a thick pad, you can put your feet down in there. But I don't know about that. We'll see. Either way, toss a bunch of gear in that hatch cover and close it up. Keep all that gear dry when you're underway. And even with it being low enough, you should be able to stand on it in decent weather. And keep the boat wide open. You know, it shouldn't make the boat feel like a really open boat. Also, under that front hatch, there should be room, not a ton, but there should be room for one person to lay down and sleep. So if the weather's really cold and you're alone on it, if I'm taking this boat out by myself in the winter, or if it gets cold and rainy, you know, just get in there and close that hatch up most of the way or all the way, and there isn't enough volume to heat up that it should keep you really cozy in there. Anyways, 15 foot, 4 inch trailer sailor yawl for 2 people to sleep on board. Quite a bit of covered volume to store some stuff or for one person to sleep on. It's gonna have 3 chines. 2 of them are gonna be lapped to try to make it look good. Lots of positive flotation when it's laid on its side, which should help combat how much volume is in that aft cockpit. The bed bug. You can get box store materials that are so bad that you're just throwing money away, but I found that, I think it's this Roseburg branded 11/32, or like it's a sanded 3/8 inch ACX exterior grade Doug fir. I get it from home. It has worked well for me in the past, and a couple boats that I've used it on have held up. So I went and got 10 sheets of this. I did have an issue where this ACX was a little bit warped, so I started picking my best sheets to start drawing frames where it really needs to be flat. The warped sheets, I'm going to bend them anyways. So it is nice having all these dimensions just exact on an electric file on my computer when I draw them out. Everything is just everything is perfect to the 100th of an inch, or to the millimeter, which is much more precise than I could ever build to. I mean, a millimeter is like a fat pencil line is thicker than a millimeter. Something I missed here as I'm drawing these frames out is that I failed at first to draw a bisector on each chine angle. At each chine where the 2 lines for the panels come together on your frames, it's a good idea to just draw a big bisecting line there. So the reason is when you cut to these lines, the exact point where they intersect gets lost a little. And then later I'm going to measure my planks to that intersecting point. And so I'm going to measure my planks to that intersecting point, but if it's moved a little bit, it's not going to be an exactly fair curve no matter how exact everything else is in my build. And I'm just starting with a dimension that's a little bit off. And so I'd prefer to avoid that, and the way to avoid that is by drawing a bisector on your frames before you cut them and lose where that chine should be at. And now I can set up all my frames, just prop them up on bricks to get a feel for the shape of the boat, even though they're not following the rocker dimension on there. But just looking at this, I can tell something is off. If you look at this shear line, one of these frames, one of them is really off. So I drew out just like the top dimension and bottom dimension for this frame on a clean sheet of ply. And I'm like, I'm just going to put this frame on the ply and it'll show me exactly where it's off and I'll fix it. So I do it, and I put my frame on the dimensions I drew on the ply, and my frame lines up perfectly with my dimensions on that sheet. And I can't figure out what's wrong. I flip it around and I'm thinking I did something wrong. maybe how did I measure something wrong? But then now it lines up, and maybe my CAD drawing is off, maybe my other frames are off, maybe the bottom of the frame is off, and I'm racking my brain, and I'm going and remeasuring for a third time, and I realize
7.7. That's what you did. Let's go 6, 7, 7. Measured it wrong twice.
that I had measured
That's what I did.
the exact wrong dimension twice on the same side. That I measured 677 millimeters. I drew the line at 707 millimeters twice at the exact same spot. So it was easy to fix, you know, once I finally realized I wasn't going crazy and I found my mistake.
All right, hero shot again.
Now I'm going to cut cleats for my frames, but I wanted to test my cleat dimensions first. So I glued a couple possible dimensions to some scrap. Just glued them up with PL Premium to test how they split. Without drilling pilot holes, with pilot holes, and I ended up finding that a 5/8 inch by 7/8 inch with a 7/8 glued to my frame should work for me as long as I'm drilling good pilot holes. I also found that my cleats, this dimensional Doug fir from the big box store, was splitting across my grain more than it was splitting along the grain. So keeping that in mind, I found a 2x4 by 12. Actually, I ended up using two 2x4 by 12s for my cleats, and I made it so I was drawing that out that it was going to be drilled along the grain. I mean, if I neglected a curve dimension, I could have made 4 by 2. I could have made 8 12-foot long cleats, but you know, I don't mill this out perfectly, and so I ended up doing 6. Attaching cleats on the frames doesn't have to be an exact science. If this boat were stitch and glue, of course, you wouldn't do any frames where it's going to attach to planks. You just do the frames where it's going to be structural and support a deck, and those do need to be measured pretty good to avoid like focusing stress and strain on your where those end. But the cleats along the edges of the frames, you know, as long as they're flush or a little bit proud, so I can cut a bevel down, and as long as that gap at the chines isn't too big, because I'm going to cut that out for chine logs, then these should fit okay. I use PL Premium, you know, anything below the waterline, Type Bond, even though like quote unquote waterproof Type Bond 3 will just dissolve in water if it's exposed long enough. Or this PL Premium, the polyurethane adhesives actually like last. So one problem with PL Premium though is that it needs moisture to cure. I've had this go wrong where because I'm out in the desert and there's no moisture in the air and it's sucking all the moisture out of your materials like wood. And so I've done glue ups before with PL Premium where it just never kicked, and it kind of like dried out and turned chalky. So I wipe everything down with the damp rag before I glue it with PL Premium, and that makes it go well for me. Okay, so I'm prepping all my frames, and one that's going to take a lot longer to prep is like the first bulkhead, because I'm doing a Tabernacle up front on this. I had a good piece of white oak that I had to scrape some varnish off, but I cut that up to do my Tabernacle up front, and I was torn between doing PO Premium and Type Bond because this is going to be a tough glue up, because it's going to be tough to clamp in the middle of this bulkhead. But I did end up going with PO Premium, even though the Type Bond I think is easier to work with, and the Type Bond might even do a little bit stronger of a glue job. The PO Premium, just with it being a lot more waterproof or water resistant, the polyurethane adhesive is what I went with. And it shows another problem working with this polyurethane, with this PO Premium that expands, is that it's really viscous. And so as it off gases and it maintains that viscosity for some time, you put a clamp on it and it just wants to keep moving, and you clamp it again and it moves again. And so I had that issue fighting that as I'm getting this glue up done right. I mean, so I had to keep adjusting, and I really tested the working time on this PO Premium, which I think is about 15 minutes or so, and I think I did okay. Square. But beautiful. Yep. Perfect. Okay, the Strongback. So I still got a little prep to do on my frames, but I figured I'd get my Strongback now. And you know, it turned out putting the Strongback together turned out being pretty easy, because my CAD gave me all my dimensions exact, and it even gave me, you know, it's just click, and I get an exact dimension for what my diagonal should be. And so it made it easy to make my Strongbacks to square. An issue that I did have is that that midships main thwart, the forward bulkhead is on the front edge of that line. The aft bulkhead is on the aft edge of my line. So I had to adjust my Strongback a little bit for that. Oh, it's because I'm moving that. Okay. Okay. Okay, my Strongback framing is put together, but anyone watching this with real formal training in woodworking or construction, it should be clear to you that I have no formal training in woodworking or construction. And to me, that weakness became really clear when I'm putting my Strongback, when I'm truing up my Strongback, because I made shims and I'm going to make it level. Okay, I got it level. Then I go to make it square, and then it's not level anymore. And so then I go to make it level again, and it's not square anymore. And I go back and forth doing this for longer than I should, until eventually I just made it square, and I fastened my aft Strongback, or I'm sorry, I fastened my aft bulkhead to that Strongback, screwed it on so that that was square, then I could just shim it up and make it level. It's not perfectly square right here, but it's really close. I mean, and then I can just mock up all my frames onto my Strongback, and I get a good idea of how the boat's going to look. I don't have my stem or my transom where I want them yet. I don't have a stem made yet. And I'm not fastening this down yet, but I do see the shape of the boat, and I think it looks really good. I'm really happy about how it looks visually. At least I think it's going to be pretty to my eye. I've got a plan. I got a plan for how I'm going to attach all these. What I'm going to do is I'm going to, because all my frames, everything except the stem and the transom, well, even the transom, everything except the stem attaches to either a floor or a deck and the sole on this boat. I'm gonna screw my deck and my floor right into my Strongback, and then I gotta cut a little bevel, you know, like a 2-degree bevel on my frames, and then I'm gonna have exact measurements where those frames should go so I can fasten all those frames down. And then I'm gonna have exact measurements on my sole where those frames should attach. So I should be able to put the sole right over the top of that and glue it down. Then I can work my way down planking, you know, my 3 planks on each side, and get my stem and my transom as I get that first plank. And then my Strongback is going to be screwed on from the inside, but I can lift the boat up, take the Strongback apart so the rigid Strongback is still on my frame and my sole, flip the boat upside down, take the deck and the floor off, unscrew my Strongback, prep all that inside, glue it all back down, and put my screws right back in those same holes. So with all my dimensions exact on CAD, it should be easy, and those are like famous last words at this point, where it's like, I'm just looking ahead and I'm like, yeah, how easy is that gonna be? And as soon as this video is done editing, I'm gonna start finding out exactly how easy that is. Yeah, so if this video is done, I can get back to that build. I'm still waiting on a calm, kind of cool day. It's the end of August now. We get a lot of wind, like a hot triple-digit, good sailing wind, but it's just too hot. But I'm waiting for a cool, calm day to take my dory out and do like a conclusion video on that pot liquor sailing dory. I've done a fair amount of work on it. So, like, I made a whole like real sail for it. I sealed it up, sealed up the bottom to keep some water out. I made some positive flotation in that, and I want to do a conclusion dinghy cruise with that dory. So, waiting for the weather to be right to do that. Got a couple build videos on my channel. That's it. Building, drawing, modifying, maintaining, even using little wooden boats like this is a ton of work. And sometimes, like if you saw my Goat Island skiff video, sometimes I learn by failing, which I even enjoy that. But it is rewarding, especially you get one of these little boats out on the water and you got just these natural forces of the wind and the water, and you're out in this just beautiful natural environment, and it's magic and it's all worth it. So it requires a ton of work, but the reward is proportional. That is bed bug build and design video 1. Thanks for watching.